Hi, it's Eva Longoria, and let's be real. After 40, we should ask for more from our skincare. I swear by Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. With vitamin C, pro-retinol, and hyaluronic acid, it reduces my wrinkles, firms, and brightens. And it's not a procedure. It's just a hardworking moisturizer.
Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. Grab it today in fragrance-free or with SPF 30. Available at your local Target.
Welcome to Ballot Battleground Nevada. I'm your host, Ben Margiott, a reporter at KRNV News 4 in Reno. I'm passionate about making politics in this critical battleground state more digestible to the average voter and pushing past the talking points to press politicians for answers. On this show, we take deep dives into the people, ideas, and debates shaping Silver State politics. Get ready for another session of the Nevada Legislature. No, you didn't accidentally turn on an old episode from January. Lawmakers are headed back to Carson City sometime in the next few months for a special session, the 6th since 2020. Governor Joe Lombardo announced this month that he plans to call lawmakers back to wrap up the, quote, unfinished business of the 2025 session. So when exactly will that be? What still needs to get done? And why have there been so many special sessions lately? To help us unpack all of that, we're joined this week by two Southern Nevada journalists, McKenna Ross with the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Steve Sebelius with KTNV. We wanted a couple of friends from the South because one of the biggest issues likely to come up is whether Nevada should offer new tax credits to attract the film industry. It's an issue that doesn't fall neatly along partisan lines, and it could have huge implications for the economy here in the Silver State. It was a really interesting conversation with McKenna and Steve, and I think you'll enjoy it. All right, we're bringing in two of Southern Nevada's best political reporters today, McKenna Ross with the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Steve Sebelius with KTNV Channel 13. McKenna and Steve, thank you guys so much for being here.
Hey. Glad to be here, Ben.
Are you guys making the pilgrimage up to Carson City? It is absolutely gorgeous in autumn here.
It's possible. And it seems pretty likely.
Yeah, well, it all depends on our corporate overlords if they'll let us spend the money to come up.
That's always the challenge, right? I will, if my opinion doesn't matter to your corporate overlords, but it's gorgeous this time of year. And hey, it might happen around the Nevada Day Parade. You could take part in that. So got to come up to Carson in the fall. But obviously the reason we're talking about this is the Nevada Legislature is going into a special session at some point over the next few months. We all will be following it and covering it very closely. But as I stated in the intro to the episode, wanted to bring on a few Southern Nevada reporters because perhaps the biggest topic deals with you guys more specifically, which is film tax credits. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But first off, why does the Nevada Legislature have so many special sessions? I mean, Steve, you've been covering the Nevada State House for decades now. They didn't used to be this frequent. What has changed?
Yeah, I think it really all started with the advent of the 120-day session. And they hit the mark on the first time when that was in effect. But since then, they've had almost as many special sessions as regular sessions, only because in some cases, it's very quick, a day or two to finish up unfinished business. And in other cases, it's very long. In 2020 or 2003, you had a special session that lasted almost a month. There was a standoff over taxes, and there was a lawsuit, and all sorts of things going on, to the point that it only broke when a Republican lawmaker decided he was going to vote with majority Democrats for a tax plan. And it could have gone on for a long time. And we were facing what in Nevada would be a government shutdown. The new fiscal year had begun and there wasn't money to spend. And so it was a bad situation. That's never happened since, but the potential exists for it to continue.
Yeah, some of them are, a couple days long. I think we had one in 2023 where they just had to pass one bill. And so it was like only a couple of hours long. McKenna, not from Nevada, has it kind of confused you maybe, or made you kind of wonder why we have all these special sessions? Because you're from Michigan, right? Most states don't do government this way.
No, they don't. In Michigan, it's a full-time legislature. It's actually very professionalized. And so this has been quite a difference for me. This past, regular session was my first. And, everyone told me that the pace of session, it's slow and then fast and then really, really fast the last, few days. And to see it happening live and in, quite dramatic fashion in this particular end of session, I was like, wow, this is a very interesting way to do government. Personally, I don't know if I would have written this system into existence, but I'm also, a very entrenched observer. So I'm kind of like, I think you probably could just use an extra month or two or, full year if that's what it called for. But, it definitely leads to some interesting politics and makes it interesting for us reporters.
Yeah, and some interesting outcomes. This one being they just didn't have enough time to finish all the business of the 2025 session. And that really seems to be the impetus for Governor Lombardo earlier this month, declaring that he was going to call this special session at some point over the next few months. What are you guys hearing about the possible topics? I mean, the three that I've heard are potential budget fixes or tweaks, the crime bill, and we'll get into it in great detail here in a moment, but the film tax credits, are those kind of the things that you guys are hearing as well?
Yeah, generally. I have also heard a little bit of discussion of like the potential for some of the healthcare reforms that Governor Lombardo had intended to, get through at the end of session. But that was also kind of one of the political, I guess, sacrifices of those waning hours in June. But as far as what specifically, or whether it would be the exact same bill, that's not something I really have heard a lot of specifics on.
Steve, the governor, sets the agenda of the special session, right? And the lawmakers can't bring up anything else that he doesn't specifically mention. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And there's two ways to call a special session. One is the governor issues a proclamation, and the legislature is limited to the subjects that he includes in the proclamation or any new subjects that he adds to the proclamation during the pendency of the special session. The other way is for 2/3 of the legislature to sign a petition to call themselves into special session, in which case they would set the agenda. That has never happened. It's been authorized, but that has never happened. Typically, it's by gubernatorial proclamation. So the governor has a lot of the power in this situation, as he does in most situations. The joke is that every Nevada governor is happiest when the legislature adjourns and goes home. And so I don't think he wants them up there any more than they want to be up there. Because remember, as long as they're up there, they can't raise money for their campaigns. And they have to wait 15 days after the special session to begin raising money for their campaigns as well. So they want to get this done as quickly as possible. Typically with special sessions, the 2003 one that I mentioned was an exception. They will have the agenda worked out and they will have the votes worked out. So if you see something on the proclamation, there is a very good chance that it is going to pass because the leaders and the governor have met and they've said, yes, we have the votes for example, the crime bill, and that's going through. If you don't see something on there, then that's an indication that they were not able to muster the votes for that particular thing.
Yeah, they don't want to go into special session when the outcome potentially is unclear because these special sessions do cost a decent amount of money. I don't have the figure off the top of my head. Maybe one of you guys remembers the per day cost. But let's talk about perhaps the most controversial topic that is likely or possible to be on the agenda, which is film tax credits, and Nevada passing potentially a huge expansion of its film tax credits program to expand to lure movie companies to Southern Nevada. It's been going on for a couple of years now. I believe it came up in 2023 and 2025. Why is there a push to bring movie companies to the Las Vegas area?
I think that, once the idea got planted, first kind of suggested by Senator Roberta Lang back in 2023 in her own proposal, it didn't really get off the ground then, but movie studios just capture people's attention. The idea that we could film, big movies here is so exciting to folks. And people see the complementary skills of having film studios in Southern Nevada. We have a lot of trades unions. We have people that work in stage, production, things like that. So plus we're really, really close to, of course, Hollywood, and we can, pull on that talent, or, we can have those stars fly in and out and it not really change too much for the Hollywood, producers and things like that. But Again, more than anything, I think people are just drawn into this idea that Hollywood could be the way that we diversify Southern Nevada.
I feel like that's the phrase that you always hear, right? So dependent on gaming and hospitality, and this could potentially be something else added into the mix. Is that kind of your perspective, Steve?
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be the word you're going to hear instead of diversification is going to be jobs. This is going to be cast as a jobs bill. Not only the jobs to build the studio, the construction jobs, one-time jobs, but the jobs to build sets, tear down sets, the ancillary jobs on site, and then all of the other jobs that are related to this would support an enterprise like this. And it's a fairly ambitious proposal with a fairly ambitious jobs goal. Now, there are others like Michael Brown, who is at the Lindsay Institute, a senior fellow at the Lindsay Institute, and others beyond him who are saying that these figures are ephemeral, they're not real, that they will not come to pass, and it will not create as many jobs as they say, and it's not worth the $1.4 to $1.6 billion investment, which would be the most expensive tax credit program ever allocated in the state of Nevada. So there's a big debate about it. There's going to be a big rally this week in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas ballpark, put on by labor unions that are primarily interested in building the studio. That tells me that the votes aren't quite there yet, and labor wants a show of demonstration of support so that wayward lawmakers who are on the fence about this will see that and say, I better get behind this.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, I'll point out, I believe you're probably listening to this episode on Wednesday. So today, this morning, there is a demonstration, so to speak, I believe, from Battleborn Progress, giving a letter to the governor pointing to this Governor's Office of Economic Development report that I believe kind of indicates that some of the economic benefits might be a little bit less than what advocates and proponents would want people to believe. But as you point out, potentially the biggest tax credit in Nevada history, even bigger than Tesla and the A's and the Raiders, and so much was made of each of those. Who wants to go and take a stab at kind of the quick bullet points, the nuts and bolts of which companies, over how many years, where this, Summerlin Studios project would be built, so we can get our listeners who might be unfamiliar up to speed?
Sure. I'll take a stab. So as you mentioned, the project is called Summerlin Studios, proposed to be developed by Howard Hughes Corporation. So, they're the folks behind downtown Summerlin, the ballpark where this, rally will be, and things like that. The studio partners involved are Sony Pictures Entertainment and Warner Brothers Discovery. And the incentive that they're looking for is $95 million annually for 15 years, beginning in 2028. The catch that they have added to it is that these incentives would not be available until a certain amount of money is invested, in terms of construction. So can't remember that number off the top of my head, but we'll say $1 million worth of construction has to happen before they can qualify for these tax credits. And it is interesting because our existing film tax credit program is capped at $10 million annually. And those are really tax credits that are given to studios when they're producing a film. So, Flight Risk is a great example from this year. Mark Wahlberg's action movie came out this year, filmed in Nevada. It received a little... Yeah, that was a good one. It received a little over $1 million in film tax credit, production tax credits from the state. And in this proposed situation with the film studios, they would get these production credits, but they're really tied more to the development, the infrastructure, the idea that they're actually committed to building a studio and not just coming in, filming a film and leaving.
We've heard the term transferable tax credits before with a different proposal, and there's been so many different proposals out there. I mean, at least in the most recent version that was discussed in the regular session, Assembly Bill 238, were those tax credits transferable to other movie companies, or was that just limited to this project?
Yes, they were transferable. And that is, I think, a really big part of this for any state that's developing a tax credit program for the film industry. Part of the model for these credit programs is that these businesses, if they don't meet them, they can sell them through transfer to other eligible businesses, usually at a discount. So they can kind of like earn the tax credit. They get the award from the state, but if they don't end up using it all, they can, see if they can offer it elsewhere, see if anybody else wants it, sell it at a little bit of discount, make a little money off of that. So in, the most recent version of this bill in the regular session, the transferable tax credits could have been applied to business tax, to gaming licenses, and to, I believe, another payroll related tax. And so, it wasn't built to just be, transferred between different Hollywood studios. It's possible that tax credits could be, transferred and sold to some of the biggest gaming companies in our state.
Interesting.
Help them,
So there's
reduce their tax burden.
Possibility theoretically that it doesn't end up bringing the movie industry here to the extent that supporters would hope. Steve, you were down there, I believe, at the end of the regular session, I think in June. From your reporting, talking to sources and context down there, was it just that they literally didn't have enough time to get this bill voted out of the legislature, or was there not enough of an appetite and they didn't have the votes to get it passed?
Yeah, the latter, definitely. They didn't have the votes. I interviewed enough people to do the vote counting on my own, and I knew they didn't have the votes to do it. And I think partly it is a result of senators feeling allegiance to Roberta Lang. Her proposal was very different from this final proposal on AB 238, and her proposal essentially was shunted aside as this new idea came and took center stage.
How was hers different?
Hers was primarily had an education component, and it would have created a film program for education in addition to having a studio attached. The studio that was attached to her program left and is now attached to the AB 238 version of this. And we should say, Ben, that what we'll see in the special session may not be Roberta Lang's bill, and it may not be AB 238. It may be an entirely different proposal. I would suspect that maybe the overall amount may have been reduced in order to make it more palatable to lawmakers who are on the fence about this. But I think some of the senators felt that Roberta Lang's proposal had been disrespected, that the authors of the Senate proposal hadn't done enough to incorporate her ideas or to bring her along, even as a co-sponsor for that bill. So there was some bad feelings. There weren't the votes there. And yes, they did run out of time. But I think even if they had an extra week, maybe extra 2 weeks, I don't know that that would have made a difference in terms of time because the votes just weren't there at that moment.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's one of those rare issues that doesn't break down exactly along partisan lines, where you have some more right-leaning Republicans that don't want to do the tax giveaway to big companies. You have pretty left Democrats that are kind of on the same thing, and then more so Republican or lawmakers in the middle, I should say, more supportive of this. Is that kind of how you guys see this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely an establishment party with Republicans and Democrats in it who are supporting it, and they're the wing of the legislature that I think has made the decision. Are we going to play in the economic development game of giveaways to large corporations? Answer that question, yes. The only other question that remains is how much are we going to give, and what are the conditions under which we're going to give it? There are progressive Democrats and very conservative Republicans who answer that first question and say, no, we shouldn't play in that game. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be giving subsidies to sports teams and Hollywood movie studios, all of whom, by the way, could build the facilities that they're talking about out of pocket. They could do it themselves without a dime of state money, but they won't do it unless they get the state money. So there's a conundrum in that. If you want these things in your state, you have to pony up, and they do play states against each other. As McKenna pointed out earlier, very correctly, Nevada is the best state for this. It's very close to California, a very short plane ride away. It has all sorts of tax advantages. Great filming locations. I think anybody would see that. So there are a lot of advantages that we have that aren't shared by Georgia, for example, Vancouver, British Columbia, even in close places like New Mexico. Nevada is superior to that. So there are some advantages.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
You bring up Georgia and also, the race to the bottom when it comes to tax credits. I spent a decent time last spring, looking at the case study of Georgia because they have unlimited tax credits. And so they can give millions and millions to anyone that, they've deemed, deserves and should pass the application process. And that is a political fight that's ongoing. I mean, last year they almost put a cap on it, but they didn't end up doing so. And I think it's in part because they had finally started to see the investment pay off in other ways. When I say investment, I mean the state, again, putting up all of these tax credits up. And the result was eventually these studios built real campuses, and multiple campuses have since popped up around Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, and other areas of Georgia. And so I think the businesses really rely on the idea that it's not going to be a huge tax return on investment for states. We won't see a dollar, back in tax revenue necessarily, but there's this, ephemeral, benefit of development and potential jobs and, a branding that now Georgia is known as a film capital, and no one can deny that. And I think nobody here could deny that would be an appealing thing for Nevada to have as well.
And of course, as I mentioned earlier, so much has been made about diversifying and expanding Las Vegas's economy. So lawmakers and politicians in this state are certainly sometimes eager to jump at opportunities that would do that, so that Las Vegas and to a certain extent, lesser extent, Reno are a little more insulated from the huge, we're hit hardest by a lot of these slowdowns in the economy, recessions and things like that. Let's pivot here at the end as we kind of wrap up and just talk about the crime bill, Governor Joe Lombardo's Safe Streets and Neighborhoods Act, which was one of the things that could very well be on the agenda for the special session. It was only heard, I believe, with 6 or 7 days left in the regular legislative session. Similar question to the film tax credit bill. Was there not enough appetite for that from lawmakers, or did they just run out of time to pass Governor Joe Lombardo's sweeping crime bill?
Yeah, that I think was a factor of time. You're not going to find very many politicians who are going to come out against a crime bill and thus be cast as pro-crime. I think a lot of the hang up had to do with the focus on the Strip. Because it's called Safe Streets and Neighborhoods. But the neighborhood I think most people are concerned about is the Strip. You don't want stories and headlines of high-profile shootings on the Strip, or people getting run over on the Strip, or stabbings on the Strip. That's not good for visitation. Las Vegas already has enough headwinds on it as it is without those kind of things going in.
Right.
So I think those things are factors, but I would imagine that this would be very popular and that some version of it will pass, and that's going to include Strip safety.
What specifically the Strip safety provisions?
I think the focus on the Strip had a lot to do with this attempt to establish a special court program to take any particular crimes, sometimes those smaller crimes, and let them be heard on their own docket. During testimony on that last day, when an amendment was added, and this amendment was supported by the Resort Association and the Culinary Union, which is a rare combination, but they were, supporting this effort to reintroduce a court that we had here in Clark County and had only recently dissolved, but they wanted to bring it back. And in the testimony, they said, we have problems with people who trespass on the properties hundreds of times, and we can't really do anything about it. So I think in particular, when it comes to, what they wanted to do with the Strip safety, it's that they wanted to address ways to address the concerns of resorts and the workers' unions about people who don't leave when they should leave and, cause crimes, and they may be homeless and things like that. But the ACLU was really against this particular amendment and the way that it had been brought up at the last minute. And so I think that fight is, far from over. I know that they don't, want to see that again. And they want whatever to be put in the crime bill to be fair and, to protect the people that it's supposed to protect.
I'll tick through a couple of the other possible provisions that were included in the earlier version of this, which is, getting rid of diversion courts for people who commit crimes against the elderly or children. At one point in the first version of the bill, they were going to lower the felony theft threshold, and I believe that was taken out or amended out towards the end. Possible that comes back. And then I want to say stricter penalties for stalking and a lot of other crimes. So this bill would do quite a lot. But yeah, it will run into the opposition from the ACLU and other more progressive groups worried about increasing the prison population at a time when the Nevada Department of Corrections is already racking up the overtime bill and having staffing shortages, not enough corrections officers as it is. Anything else that you guys are going to be paying attention to very closely over the next few weeks as we approach whenever this special session might come up?
I mean, there's some wild cards that could be in there. McKenna mentioned healthcare. There are some serious reductions and cuts, changes in policies and procedures that relate to healthcare that are going to affect a lot of people in Nevada. They're not going to go into effect until after the next session, but I think there are some lawmakers who say, hey, you know what? We really need to focus on these things now. We need to start preparing now to fill up if the federal government doesn't supply what we need to keep people who have healthcare now on healthcare, because it would be a shame for them to get rid of it. And then, of course, we have this cyber attack, and whether or not we're going to have any bill that would respond to that, any bill that really could. There was a bill discussed in the session that would have kind of centralized cyber response for both state and local government under a single office. That bill didn't really pass, but if you go back and listen to that hearing, it's pretty prescient in terms of the warnings that the state's cybersecurity officials were giving months before the actual cyber attack happened. So I'd be curious to see if that'll be on the agenda.
Yeah, it's a great point. I hadn't even thought of that. It's been a little over a month now, I believe, since basically the whole state kind of ground to a halt as a result of that. So yeah, another thing that could be on the agenda when and if this special session happens. I won't hold you guys to this, but what's your prediction of when this special session would happen?
I'm hearing the second week of November.
Steve?
Yeah, I think that's right around in there. Yeah, I think it'll be after Nevada Day. We're going to miss the parade, but we're going to do it so that we're not up there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because this is a time of the year when there's not a lot of political fundraisers. People aren't thinking about giving money to politicians. They're thinking about Christmas and Thanksgiving. So there really is no perfect time for a special session, but it may be a pretty good time for a special session.
Yep, that's kind of along the lines of what I've been hearing too, middle of November. So darn, you'll miss the Nevada Day parade, but you guys both have to come up even earlier just to attend that. McKenna Ross and Steve Sebelius, thank you guys so much for making the time. We really appreciate it. It's exactly why I wanted to get you guys on, because I'm a little less well-versed in all these Southern Nevada issues. So your expertise is super valuable and appreciated.
Thanks for
Glad
having
to
me.
be here, Ben.
A special thanks to McKenna and Steve for making the time this week, and a special thanks to our associate producer, Brian Petrus, who helped with research. If you made it to the end of this episode, I really appreciate it. If you have guest ideas, episode ideas, questions, comments, compliments, concerns, anything at all, I do want to hear from you. Send me an email at bjmargiott, MARGIOTT @sbgtv.com, and put Ballot Battleground Nevada in the subject line. And if you have a minute, I'd really appreciate it if you left a rating and a review, which helps the podcast show up higher in searches so more people can discover Ballot Battleground Nevada. Thanks for listening.